Hey guys, tonight we are stepping through the creaking gates of a medieval castle. You think you could last a day here? Spoiler, you probably won't. The drawbridge rattles as it rises behind you, chains grinding against wooden beams, the sound echoing through the still night air. With one final thud, the heavy iron portcullis slams down, trapping you inside a fortress that will be both your shelter and your prison. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know your location and what time it is where you're listening. I love seeing this little community span the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step forward across the cobblestone courtyard. The stones are slick with moisture, the kind that seeps into your shoes and makes every step feel heavier. A torch guttering on the wall sputters, sparks into the wind, sending shadows scurrying across the ground. The air is thick with the smell of damp hay, horse sweat, and wood smoke. You take a deep breath and immediately regret it. Historians still argue whether medieval castles were symbols of power, safe havens, or glorified prisons. Standing here, you realize it might have been all three at once. The walls rise so high they blot out the stars, and the battlements lean in like a giant stone jaw ready to snap shut. A guard trudges past you, boots pounding, chainmail clinking in rhythm. He doesn't even glance at you. The torchlight flashes across his steel helmet, momentarily blinding you before he disappears into another archway. The sound of his footsteps lingers far longer than his presence. Somewhere nearby, a horse stamps impatiently, and you catch a whiff of manure carried on the cold breeze. You wrinkle your nose. Sure, castles look glamorous in films and documentaries, but nobody tells you about the constant stink. Archaeologists even discovered that castle courtyards often doubled as open drains. You might laugh imagining yourself tiptoeing between puddles, muttering about the world's worst room service. You notice the ground underfoot slopes slightly toward a grated channel, an early attempt at plumbing. Whether it worked or just redirected filth into another corner of the fortress, historians still debate. All you know is you're keeping your shoes firmly on. A servant approaches, his hands clutching a loaf of bread. He doesn't greet you, doesn't even make eye contact, just thrusts the hard hunk into your hands before scurrying off again. The crust is so tough you could probably chip a tooth on it. Yes, this is dinner. The idea of pillow-soft bread from a bakery is centuries away. You take a tentative bite and the crunch echoes louder than the guard's boots. Bon appetit, you mutter under your breath, imagining modern dentists fainting at the sight of such medieval meals. The taste is plain, gritty, and faintly sour. You're already missing your kitchen back home. Overhead, the wind howls through arrow slits, making the castle moan like some restless creature. A torch sputters and dies, plunging one corner of the courtyard into shadow. The sudden darkness makes your heartbeat quicken. You can't help but wonder what lurks unseen in the corners. Rats, thieves, or worse. Your eyes adjust slowly, and you realize how empty this place feels. Despite the towering walls and iron gates, you sense no real safety. Instead, the atmosphere presses on you like a weight, as though the castle itself is watching, measuring whether you'll make it through the night. Historians remind us that castles were never quiet sanctuaries. They were bustling centers of work, gossip, and danger. Somewhere, a cook shouts at a servant. Somewhere else, a dog barks at shadows. You hear both, faint but distinct, carried on the damp wind. You chew another bite of that rock-hard bread and tell yourself you'll get used to this, but will you? That question lingers like the echo of the chains that sealed the gate behind you, and so your night is only beginning. The bread still sits heavy in your stomach as you step deeper into the castle. The courtyard fades behind you, swallowed by a stone archway that feels more like the mouth of some sleeping beast. The air shifts instantly outside, chill replaced with an even colder damp that clings to your skin. Every breath feels like inhaling a wet rag. You trail your fingers along the wall, and it's exactly as you feared, slimy with condensation. The stone is slick, each block exhaling centuries of moisture. It's not just cold, it's the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. Historians still argue whether castles were actually drafty by design or just poorly maintained, but you don't need a degree to know you'd kill for central heating right now. Your footsteps echo louder than you expect, the corridor magnifying each sound until it feels like you're not walking alone. Water drips somewhere ahead, steady and unrelenting, like the tick of a clock. You wonder if people centuries ago found this sound comforting or maddening. Either way, it's your lullaby now. Suddenly a gust of wind whistles through an arrow slit, carrying with it the smell of smoke and wet straw. The flame on the nearest torch trembles violently, casting jittery shadows across the walls. For a moment, the stone around you seems alive, like the castle is breathing with you, watching you. You laugh nervously, whispering, "Yep, haunted. Definitely haunted." A rat scurries past your boot, claws scratching on stone, tail flicking in annoyance at your intrusion. You flinch. People often think castles were glamorous palaces, but in truth they were rodent playgrounds. Archaeologists have even found rat bones nestled in between flagstones, proof that they were permanent residents here. Congratulations, you now share your living quarters with medieval vermin. Somewhere behind you, boots scrape against the floor. You whirl around, heart racing. Nothing, just shadows and silence. Still, your pulse doesn't slow. Historians might argue about the castle's role in politics or warfare, but right now all you know is it doubles as the world's largest anxiety chamber. You press onward, the corridor narrowing, ceiling dipping lower until you feel the weight of stone pressing on your shoulders. A torch flares suddenly, sparks spitting into your path. The guard who lit it doesn't even acknowledge you, just grunts and keeps moving. His shadow stretches long and thin until it looks like a ghost clinging to the wall. You think of home hallways painted, well lit, a thermostat humming quietly. Here, the only warmth comes from fire, and the only sound is the relentless dripping of water. You can't help but shiver. Could anyone really survive this kind of life without going mad? Historians still argue. The rat squeaks again, as if giving its opinion. You mutter, "Yeah, I didn't ask you," and keep moving forward. The corridor winds on, darker and damper, dragging you deeper into a fortress that feels more alive the further you go. And though your steps echo like you're not alone, you can't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, you really aren't. And so you drift deeper into the castle's secrets. You keep moving deeper, the damp corridors tightening behind you until you stumble into a narrow service hall. At first you don't even realize where you are. The sudden shift from cold stone to a slightly warmer, smoke-filled air makes you cough. The air tastes of ash, meat grease, and something sour that lingers like a bad memory. You want to breathe easier, but each breath feels like inhaling the exhaust of 100 campfires. Before you can gather your bearings, a figure crashes into you, small, wiry, and moving too fast to stop. He shoves something into your chest, hard enough to sting. You glance down and realize you've just been gifted or cursed with a loaf of bread. Not the sort you'd find neatly wrapped in a bakery bag. This one looks like it survived a war. Its crust is cracked, jagged, and feels almost weaponized in your hands. You blink, half expecting the servant to apologize, maybe at least grunt some explanation. But no, he's already gone, scuttling back into the smoky maze of doorways, arms already full with another tray of food. You watch him vanish and think, well, welcome to medieval room service. 1 star, would not recommend. The bread itself demands your attention. You lift it, feeling its weight. Dense, heavy, it could double as a brick. You knock your knuckles against the crust and hear a hollow thunk echo, like rapping on a door. You smirk congratulations, you've just received dinner and self-defense in a single serving. You tear off a piece, expecting resistance, and oh, it fights you. The crust resists your teeth like it's been forged in a blacksmith's fire. When you finally manage to chew, it crumbles into gritty fragments that grind between your molars. Grit, literal grit, because medieval millstones shed flecks of stone into flour. Historians still argue whether people adapted to this crunch or simply endured cracked teeth as an occupational hazard of survival. Either way, your dentist back home would be weeping into his gloves. The flavor? Let's just say it's closer to chewing a cardboard box than anything resembling comfort food. Sour, dry, and rough. Your tongue instantly begs for water, ale, anything. You glance around for a cup, but of course there's none. In medieval castles, hydration wasn't exactly complimentary. If you were lucky, you got ale weak, cloudy, and brewed mostly so you wouldn't die from bacteria. If you were unlucky, well, that dripping water echoing through the corridors suddenly looks appealing. A dog appears at your feet, ribs showing through patchy fur, eyes glowing with interest. Finally, someone who might share in your misery. You drop a chunk of bread onto the floor. The dog sniffs it, tilts its head, and then without a second glance wanders off. You stare, betrayed. When even a half-starved castle dog turns its nose up, you know you're in trouble. Still, bread was the backbone of medieval diets, not just food currency. Rent was sometimes paid in loaves. Kings measured wealth in grain. A good harvest meant survival. A bad one spelled riots. Some loaves even doubled as tableware. Trenchers, hollowed hunks of bread served as plates. Once the meal was over, you either ate the trencher or gave it to the servants. Imagine your dinner plate today dissolving into crumbs between bites. Elegant, not really. Efficient, absolutely. The hall buzzes with noise pots clanging, servants shouting, the constant hiss of fat hitting open flames. Smoke clings to the rafters, staining them black. Your eyes water as the haze thickens, and you can't help coughing. You wonder how anyone could breathe here for hours, day after day. Historians debate whether servants built up tolerance or just coughed themselves into oblivion. Either way, you're not making it through a shift. Another servant hustles past carrying a cauldron of stew. The smell makes your stomach lurch, meat boiled beyond recognition. Herbs scattered without finesse. You peer inside and spot something floating. Is it a carrot, a bone? You decide not to look too closely. Curiosity killed the cat, and here it might kill your appetite. Suddenly a shout echoes from the far end of the hall. Two men argue, their voices bouncing against the stone. One slams a jug onto the table so hard liquid splashes across the floor. Ale, thin and sour, seeps into the cracks. You imagine ants and rats feasting later. Castles weren't sanitized marvels, they were messy, crowded and alive with pests. Archaeologists have found evidence of fleas and lice in every corner. Congratulations, you're standing in ground zero for the medieval health department's nightmares. A rat squeaks somewhere above, scrambling across a rafter. You glance up, half expecting it to leap into your loaf. You clutch the bread tighter, suddenly protective. Funny how something you hated moments ago now feels like your lifeline. You glance around again. Servants weave in and out like bees in a hive, faces drawn with exhaustion. They don't stop, don't chat, don't even glance your way. Invisible people keeping a fortress alive. Their lives were thankless, their labour endless. Historians remind us that many never saw beyond the castle walls, spending entire lives in service, anonymity guaranteed. You what? H1 girl stumble, jug sloshing, and wonder how she keeps moving. Maybe she doesn't know any other way. The bread sits heavier in your stomach now, a knot pressing down, dragging you lower. You take another bite anyway because what choice do you have? Hunger isn't optional here. You chew, slow and grudging, until your jaw aches. You mutter to yourself, this better burn some serious calories. And still, a strange calm steals over you. The clang of pots, the hiss of flames, the shouts of servants, all of it blends into a rhythm, almost hypnotic. You lean against the wall, eyes fluttering as your body adjusts to this new world. A miserable world, yes, but steady in its misery. Yet the longer you stand here, the more you realize this is just your first test. Surviving a loaf of bread is the easiest challenge you'll face. The night is long and the castle has countless more trials waiting. You clutch the loaf tightly as if it might anchor you and take a step deeper into the smoke-choked hall. The shadows grow longer, the noise louder and the air thicker. Already the bread feels less like food and more like a burden. And so, brick of bread in hand, you stumble onward, deeper into castle life, wondering how many more tests lie ahead before dawn. The loaf of bread still weighs in your hand as you step out of the smoky service hall and into a grander space. The shift is startling. One moment you're jostled among scurrying servants. The next you're standing at the threshold of the castle's pride, the Great Hall. It is vast, cavernous, with ceilings so high they vanish into shadows. Rows of long wooden tables stretch like rivers of oak, their surfaces scarred by centuries of knives, spilled ale, and perhaps the occasional dagger fight. Torches line the walls, their flames flickering orange across faded tapestries, depicting knights, saints, and beasts you can barely recognize. The hall breathes with its own rhythm, a chorus of clattering cups, laughter that borders on menace, and the faint twang of a lute plucking somewhere near the dais. The smell is the first assault. At first it's intoxicating, roasted meats, spiced wine, sweet pastries dripping with honey. But the deeper you inhale, the more the other notes sneak through the sour tang of spoiled ale, sweat-soaked wool, and the unmistakable undercurrent of smoke mixed with rot. Historians still argue whether the glamour of medieval banquets outweighed the reality of their hygiene. Standing here, you're leaning toward absolutely not. A servant waves you forward, directing you toward a bench along one of the side tables. The wood creaks as you sit, and you quickly realize the bench isn't designed for comfort. A platter slams down in front of you with such force that grease splatters your sleeve. On it lies a haunch of meat, its skin blistered and shiny. You lean closer and realize it's still bleeding faintly. Medium rare? No, more like still mooing. You hesitate. Somewhere in the rafters a raven croaks, not exactly a Michelin-starred endorsement. Feasts like these were more about spectacle than sustenance. Lords flaunted wealth by piling tables high with exos. Tick game, swan, peacock, even porpoise. Records describe entire animals served whole, feathers reattached after roasting, so diners could marvel before tearing into them. Tonight, your plate is less theatrical, but no less disturbing. You saw the bread nearly break your teeth, now the meat threatens your stomach. A jug of ale is thrust into your hand. You take a gulp, desperate to wash down the taste of char and iron. It's sour, cloudy, and barely alcoholic. Stronger than water, safer than water, but still more punishment than refreshment. You cough, and the man beside you laughs, his breath a noxious blend of onions and whatever he's chewing. Not used to the good stuff, eh? He jeers. You force a smile. The hall is alive with voices. Nobles laugh too loudly at jokes no one else dares ignore. Servants weave between tables, spilling as much as they serve. Children chase each other, their shrieks echoing until a guard barks them into silence. Dogs prowl beneath the benches, snapping up fallen scraps. The floor, you notice, is already sticky with grease and drink. You shuffle your feet, grimacing at the tacky sound. A platter of pies appears next. They look golden, inviting, their crusts puffed like clouds. You eagerly cut into one only to recoil. Inside, the filling is a greyish mash of who knows what. Minced meat, sure, but possibly also offal, fat, or worse. In an age without refrigeration, mystery pie could mean last week's leftovers. Historians still debate how common food poisoning was, but your stomach is already preparing its answer. Across the hall, a bard strikes up a louder tune, his voice rising above the din. A verse about heroic knights slaying dragons. But his melody wavers, and you suspect the dragon had a better chance than his singing career. Nobles clap anyway, more interested in their goblets than the tune. The lord of the castle presides at the high table. His goblet is taller, his meat fatter, his laughter louder. But even from here, you see the cracks wine dribbling down his chin, grease staining his doublet. Power doesn't equal refinement, you realize. It equals abundance. He gestures, and servants rush to refill his cup before it's even half empty. Meanwhile, you're still gnawing on bread fit for a quarry. Then the entertainment shifts. A jester tumbles into the hall, bells jangling, face painted in garish streaks. He cartwheels dangerously close to the fire pit, earning cheers from some and worried gasps from others. His jokes are crude, his gestures exaggerated. You laugh once, politely, before realizing his humor leans less on wit and more on slapstick. Still, laughter drowns unease. That, perhaps, is his real duty. But beneath the spectacle, shadows lurk. You notice a servant slipping something into a cup, wine darkened further by a pinch of powder. The noble who receives it laughs obliviously, sipping without pause. Historians still argue how frequent poisoning really was, but in this hall, suspicion feels natural. Every smile might hide a dagger. Every toast might be your last. The noise swells, ale spills, someone vomits behind you. You grip your cup tighter, suddenly cautious. You take another bite of bread, hoping its blandness will shield you from the chaos. It doesn't. And yet, amidst the danger, a strange awe seeps in. This hall is the castle's beating heart, pulsing with noise, heat, and power. You glance around at the flickering torches, the scraps littering the floor, the half-empty goblets clinking together, and realize this isn't just a feast, it's survival disguised as celebration. You swallow another bite of pie, grimace, and wonder how long your stomach will tolerate the secrets baked inside. The hall roars on, oblivious, as though daring you to lick. Asked the night. And so, surrounded by feasts that threaten as much as they nourish, you steel yourself for the castle's next challenge. The great hall still hums behind you, noisy and chaotic, as you're ushered toward the quieter parts of the castle. Your stomach churns with the mystery pie and sour ale, and you pray silently, desperately for some rest. A guard points you up a narrow spiral staircase. The stone steps twist endlessly, worn smooth in the center from centuries of boots. Each step feels heavier than the last. You grip the cold wall for balance, half dizzy from the climb. Finally, you reach the sleeping quarters. At first glance, you sigh with relief. Rows of straw mattresses line the room, each bundled with coarse blankets. There's no silk, no feather pillows, but after hours of damp corridors and smoke-choked halls, even straw looks inviting. You step closer, kneel down, and press your hand into one. Immediately, something wriggles beneath your palm. You jerk back, heart leaping. The mattress rustles again, and then you see it, a flea hopping, bold and tiny, disappearing back into the straw. Welcome to medieval bedding, where the night shift belongs to insects. Historians remind us that beds were prized possessions, but comfort was relative. Straw was cheap, easy to replace, and unfortunately the perfect playground for lice, fleas, and bedbugs. Archaeologists have found remains of these critters preserved in bedding centuries old. You shudder at the thought that the same pests waiting for you tonight once dined on the blood of lords and peasants alike. You peel back the blanket. It smells faintly of mildew, mixed with the sour tang of sweat that never quite washes out. You hesitate. Do you dare lie down? The alternative is sleeping on the cold stone floor, which honestly doesn't sound much better. You laugh quietly to yourself, muttering, "Pick your poison." You lower yourself carefully, trying not to think about the skittering shapes hidden beneath the straw. The mattress sighs under your weight, releasing a puff of dust that tickles your throat. You cough, swatting the air, and imagine you've just inhaled the ghosts of 10 previous sleepers. Congratulations, you're now part of castle history. The blanket itches against your skin, coarse and scratchy. Wool, yes, but wool spun without mercy. You tug it higher, shivering, and try to find a position that feels remotely restful. Every movement makes the straw crunch and shift, sending another wave of tiny vibrations across your body. Are they just the stalks or the fleas crawling closer? You try not to think about it. Above you, wooden beams creak as the wind rattles the shutters. A draft snakes across the room, cutting through even the thick blanket. The cold here is alive, slipping under the covers like an unwelcome bedfellow. You curl tighter, knees drawn up, and imagine how people endured winters like this. Historians still argue whether castle dwellers built tolerance to the chill or simply suffered endlessly. Tonight you're siding with suffer endlessly. Other bodies shuffle nearby, servants and guards snore, their breathing uneven. Someone mutters in their sleep. Another coughs violently, hacking up phlegm that echoes in the chamber. You wince, pulling the blanket closer to your face. If the fleas don't get you, the medieval germs might. The concept of quarantine is centuries away. Illness spreads here like gossip, fast, loud, and unavoidable. You close your eyes, willing yourself to relax, but every second brings a new distraction. A flea bites your ankle. You scratch furiously. A mouse scurries across the floor, its claws clicking like tiny drum beats. Somewhere, water drips again, steady as always. Even in bed, the castle won't let you forget its damp heart. And yet, despite it all, exhaustion begins to win. Your body sinks deeper, surrendering to the crunching straw. The itchiness dulls into background noise. The snoring becomes a strange lullaby. Even the fleas in their annoying persistence blur into the rhythm of castle life. You drift half asleep and images blur, torches flickering, banners swaying, bread crumbling between your teeth. You hear echoes of laughter from the great hall, ghostly and far away. The castle wraps you in its heavy embrace, not comforting, but consuming. Then you jerk awake, a sharp sting on your wrist, another on your neck. You slap blindly, scratching, but the bites are already rising. The fleas are celebrating their midnight feast. You groan, rolling over, blanket tangled around your legs. Sleep feels impossible now. Still the others around you snore on, oblivious. Perhaps they've surrendered long ago. Maybe the trick isn't to fight the discomfort, but to accept it. You laugh softly at the absurdity. That true survival here might mean learning to coexist with bedbugs. You adjust again, pull the blanket over your head, and breathe slowly. The air is hot, stuffy, but it shields you from the crawling sensation. Your eyelids droop. Against all odds, you find yourself slipping again toward uneasy rest. Historians note that nobles had better beds, feathers, fine linens, canopies to block drafts. But even those luxuries weren't immune to pests. Parasites knew no rank. Tonight, lying in straw that scratches and bites, you realize you're sharing the most democratic experience of medieval life. Kings, servants, guards, everyone itched. You sigh, shifting one last time, resigning yourself to whatever creatures crawl unseen. The castle whispers around you, creaks in the beams, coughs in the dark, drips in the stone. And though every nerve in your body protests, sleep begins to take you anyway. The mattress crunches softly beneath you. The fleas feast without mercy. And yet your eyes close, dragging you into the uneasy dreams of a castle night. And so, wrapped in straw, itching and shivering, you begin to learn the true meaning of medieval rest. The first thing you register isn't light, it isn't warmth, it isn't even silence, it's noise. A sharp clang, metal on metal, rips you from your uneasy half-sleep. The straw mattress crackles as you jolt upright, blanket tangled around your legs. For a moment, you don't know where you are. Shadows still cling to the corners, the air heavy with dampness and stale breath. Then the bell clangs again, louder, shaking through the beams overhead. Your head throbs. You rub your eyes, scratching at fresh bites along your wrist. The fleas had their fun while you tossed and turned. Your body aches from the stiff straw, but the bell gives you no chance to linger. Again it booms, echoing through the corridors. Morning has arrived whether you're ready or not. You drag yourself upright, shivering as the cold morning air sneaks under your tunic. Around you the others stir. A guard curses under his breath. A servant coughs, clutching his chest. Someone nearby groans, clearly wishing the bell's rope would snap. But there's no reprieve. The castle wakes on its own schedule. You shuffle toward the narrow window, rubbing your arms for warmth. The shutters creak open just enough to let in a sliver of grey dawn. The courtyard below is already alive. Chickens squawk, horses stamp in their stalls, servants hurry across the cobblestones, balancing buckets that slosh water with each hurried step. You watch steam rise from their breath, white clouds vanishing instantly into the cold air. The bell tolls again and you wince. Its rhythm is relentless, commanding. Historians still argue whether medieval mornings felt harsher because of the bells or because of the lives they demanded. Either way, you're discovering firsthand how little choice you have. Your stomach growls, still unsettled from last night's feast. You glance around, hoping for food. On the far side of the room, a servant hands out morceaux. The bread. It looks no better than yesterday's, a hard lump, dry and grey. You laugh quietly to yourself, muttering, "At least it doubles as a weapon." You tuck the loaf under your arm and try to pretend you're grateful. The smell of smoke drifts in again, clinging to everything. Fires are being stoked in kitchens below, preparing for the day's meals. But here, the air is all cold stone and mildew. You pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders, reluctant to move. But movement is non-negotiable. The guard from last night stomps into the chamber, chainmail clinking. His voice booms over the groans. Up, work won't wait for your whining. He kicks at a servant still curled in the straw. The poor boy scrambles up, eyes wide, fear painted across his face. You look away, pretending not to notice, but the scene lingers. You follow the others down the spiral staircase, bread tucked under your arm. The steps are slick with condensation, forcing you to grip the wall. The air grows warmer as you descend, the smell of smoke thickening. Eventually you spill into the courtyard. The morning is in full swing now. Horses are saddled, buckets clatter, chickens dart between feet. It's chaos, but ordered chaos. Everyone knows their role except you. You nibble the bread, jaw aching, and wonder how anyone survived years of this diet. Historians still argue whether medieval people adapted or simply endured constant discomfort. Either way, the bread sits like a stone in your gut. In the center of the courtyard, the bell tolls one final time, then falls silent. The quiet that follows is deafening, filled only by the hum of daily labor. Servants rush past with trays, guards adjust helmets, a blacksmith pounds at his anvil, each strike ringing sharp. The castle pulses like a machine, powered by sweat and duty. You wander, unsure where to fit in. The guard notices and points you toward a trough. Water, he grunts. You hesitate, glancing at the murky surface. A thin film floats across the top. Your reflection looks worse than you feel. Dark circles under your eyes, hair stuck with straw, bites dotting your skin. You sigh and splash your face anyway. The water is icy, shocking your senses awake. Nearby, a boy struggles with a bucket too heavy for his arms. You step forward to help, lifting it easily compared to him. He nods once, grateful, then hurries off. For a moment, you feel almost useful, but then you remember this isn't your world. You're just surviving, one clang of the bell at a time. The cold bites harder as the morning deepens. Clouds loom overhead, heavy and dark. A drizzle begins, soaking the cobblestones, chilling your bones. You clutch your bread tighter, muttering, "So much for breakfast in bed." And yet, despite the discomfort, a rhythm settles. The castle is alive, every corner bustling, every sound layered into a strange symphony. It's harsh, yes, but it's also steady, predictable. In some strange way, it begins to soothe you. Still, as you glance up at the towering walls, you can't help but wonder, how many more mornings could you endure like this before you broke? Historians may debate, but your body already whispers its answer. Not many. And so, with the bell's echo fading in your ears, you step into the rhythm of castle life, another soul swallowed by its relentless dawn. The morning drizzle doesn't let up. By the time you've shuffled across the courtyard, the damp has soaked through your sleeves and numbed your fingers. You keep flexing them, trying to coax warmth back, but the castle doesn't care. Everyone here is already at work, shoulders bent, tools clattering, boots splashing through mud. No one waits for you to adjust. A guard points at a stack of firewood piled beneath an awning. His meaning is clear. Work. You stare at the mound logs thick as your arm, damp from rain, slippery under their bark. He thrusts an axe toward you. It's heavier than you expect, its edge dull with overuse. You swallow hard. This is no tidy chore for the backyard. This is survival fuel. Without fire, no meals, no warmth, no light. You drag the first log onto the block, raise the axe and bring it down. The blade bounces off with a useless thud. Your hands sting, your shoulders ache. Around you, others work without pause, splitting logs cleanly, stacking them in neat rows. You grit your teeth, swing again, and finally the log splits, uneven but acceptable. A small victory, though your arms tremble already. Hours pass like this swing, miss, split, stack. Your palms blister, skin tearing under the constant grip. You hiss, but no one notices, no one cares. In the castle's rhythm, your pain is irrelevant. Historians still argue whether peasants built toughness over years or simply lived in constant agony. Judging by your hands, the latter feels more accurate. When the pile finally shrinks, you slump against the block, chest heaving. But respite is brief. Another servant waves you toward the stables. The smell hits first. Manure, sweat, hay soaked in urine. You gag, covering your nose. The stable boy grins, amused at your weakness. He thrusts a pitchfork into your hands and points at a stall thick with straw and filth. You sigh, stepping inside. The horse eye. You suspiciously, tail flicking. You begin shoveling, each forkful heavier than the last, straw clinging wet and foul. The stench clings to your clothes, your hair, your very skin. You mutter, "Ode a medieval perfume." and wonder if you'll ever breathe fresh air again. The stable boy works beside you, whistling, tossing muck with ease. You watch him, marveling at his rhythm. For him, this is routine. For you, it's punishment disguised as necessity. By the time the stall is clean, sweat drips down your back, mixing with the stench. You lean on the pitchfork, panting as the boy scatters fresh straw with practiced hands. Next comes hauling water, buckets lined along the well, heavy with icy liquid. You grab two, nearly tipping under their weight. The handles bite into your palms, reopening blisters. You grit your teeth, staggering across the yard, careful not to spill. Others pass by, carrying double your load, barely breaking a sweat. You envy them, but also pity them. Their strength comes from repetition. Yours is borrowed, fleeting. By midday, your body feels broken. Every muscle screams, every joint protests. You collapse onto a bench, bread lumps still tucked at your side. You gnaw at it reluctantly, jaw aching with each bite. Around you, workers eat quickly, silently, their faces blank. No chatter, no laughter, just fuel. Meals here aren't social occasions, they're pit stops in endless labour. The bell tolls again, signalling the afternoon. You groan, wishing it meant rest. Instead, another task awaits, scrubbing pots in the smoky kitchen. The cauldrons are blackened with soot, crusted with grease. You scrape with a rag until your arms feel like lead. Ash coats your skin, smoke stings your eyes. You cough, remembering last night's haze, and wonder if anyone in this castle has lungs left intact. Historians still debate whether castle servants found pride in their toil or merely endured it. Judging by the hollow stares of those around you, endurance seems the safer bet. A girl no older than 12 scrubs beside you, her hands raw, her eyes glazed. You want to ask her something, anything, but her silence warns you off. Words waste energy here. When the pots are finally stacked, you stagger back into the courtyard. The drizzle has eased, replaced by a biting wind. Your clothes cling damp to your skin. You rub your arms, wishing for warmth, but no firewood doesn't split itself. You glance at the pile you stacked earlier, now nearly gone, and groan. Tomorrow, you'll face the axe again. And yet, amidst the exhaustion, you notice something. The rhythm of the work has dulled your fear. The endless grind distracts from fleas, from poison, from sickness. Pain narrows the world into one simple truth. Survive this task, then the next. You realize this is the castle's secret. Not terror, not splendor. Grind. Work so constant it leaves no room for thought. You slump against the wall, breath fogging in the cold air. For the first time, you understand why most people here never left these walls. Not because they couldn't, but because survival consumed every ounce of them. Adventure, freedom, curiosity, luxuries for those with leisure. For everyone else, labor was life. Your hands throb. Your back screams, and still, the guard gestures for more. The castle swallows your protests whole. And so, as the sun crawls reluctantly across the sky, you bend again to the grindstone of daily labor, another body in the endless cycle of toil. By afternoon, when your body already feels like a bundle of aches stitched together, a new misery creeps in. Smell. Not the faint smoky haze of the kitchens, not even the manure-soaked stables you've endured. No, this is the human stench that rises from unwashed bodies packed inside stone walls, a cloud so stubborn it feels alive. You notice it first in yourself. Sweat clings under your tunic, damp patches spreading, dust and ash sticking where your skin should feel clean. You sniff your sleeve and immediately regret it, but then you realize it isn't just you. Everyone carries the same sour perfume. Baths here are rare luxuries. Historians still argue about how often medieval people washed, but one truth repeats, not often enough by your standards. Some nobles bathed a few times a year, more for ritual than for comfort. Servants like the ones brushing past you, they might never soak in a proper tub at all. Water was labour, heat was labour, privacy was non-existent. You're led into a side chamber where a trough of water sits, meant for washing hands and faces. The surface is already murky, floating with flecks of straw, grease, and unidentifiable scum. A servant splashes his face, then another dunks an entire loaf of bread for softening. You step back quickly, stomach turning. That's the same water you're supposed to clean with? No, thank you. But smell allows no choice. You cup your hands, splash, and instantly regret it. The water chills to your bones, but worse is the film it leaves behind, as if dirt has learned to fight back. You wipe at your face, half hoping you're cleaner, half knowing you're just wetter. A boy passes carrying a wooden bucket. Steam curls faintly from its rim. You perk up. Hot water? Finally, some salvation. You follow him eagerly, only to watch as he pours it into a small wooden tub reserved for the steward. Nobles and officials claimed heat before. Re-servants, you sigh. If you're lucky, you'll be offered the cooled leftovers tomorrow. You think about soap, reach for a bar that isn't there. In this world, soap means a harsh concoction of animal fat and ash, rough enough to scrape rather than soothe. Some people used herbs, rose petals, or oils if they were wealthy. You rub at your arms with your sleeve, only smearing the grime. The air itself assaults you now. A man passes with armpits unchecked for weeks. Another exhales, his breath so sour you wonder if his teeth are staging a rebellion. Dentistry, non-existent. Historians remind us tooth powder existed, often made with crushed bones or shells, but judging by the odour here, no one used it consistently. You gag, pulling your collar to your nose. You stumble toward the guardrobe, the castle's latrine. A narrow chamber juts out over the moat, with a hole cut in stone. You lean in cautiously and instantly recoil. The smell is a beast of its own, heavy and acrid, rolling upward in waves. Your eyes water. You cough. Someone behind you mutters, shoves past, and squats without hesitation. You flee, gagging. Privacy here is as rare as soap. The truth settles heavy. Castles weren't clean sanctuaries. They were crowded, damp and crawling. Fleas in straw, rats in kitchens, smells in every hall. Archaeologists have even found latrine pits filled with parasites, proof that hygiene was less a habit and more a fantasy. You rub your itching wrist, remembering the fleas, and sigh. Back in the courtyard, the wind shifts, carrying the mixed aromas of manure, sweat, smoke, and spoiled food. You mutter, "Ode a medieval nightmare," and almost laugh at your own joke. Almost. The air is too thick to find it funny. Still, there were rare baths. Nobles might gather in heated rooms, soaking in tubs while servants poured more hot water. Herbs and oils scented the steam, masking the rot for a short while. But even then, superstition warned against too much bathing. Some believed water opened pores, letting in illness. Ironically, avoiding baths was considered healthier. Historians still argue whether this belief came from observation or simple fear. Either way, tonight you'd risk plague for a scrub. You glance at the well, wondering if you could sneak a bucketful for yourself. But the thought of hauling icy water, stripping in the draughty hall, and inviting fleas back the moment you lie in straw, your enthusiasm fades. Cleanliness here is temporary, defeat inevitable. Nearby, a servant shakes out bedding, releasing a visible cloud of dust and lice. You shudder. Another scratches furiously at his neck, leaving angry red lines. The castle hums with labour, but beneath it all is a constant chorus of scratching, coughing, spitting, the music of daily hygiene, or, rather, the lack of it. You lean against a wall, letting the stone's chill seep into your back. Your skin crawls. You itch in places you wish you didn't. Sleep last night was bad enough, tonight will be worse. The fleas, now well-fed, will be waiting. You chuckle bitterly. At least something here is thriving. And yet, despite the misery, life continues. Servants laugh at a crude joke. Guards share a jug of ale, passing it like medicine. The castle stinks, yes, but the people inside it endure. Perhaps that's the real secret of hygiene here, not soap, not baths, but stubborn survival. You scratch again, sigh, and resign yourself. Clean or dirty, sweet-smelling or foul, the castle swallows all the same. And so, reeking and itching, you carry the weight of medieval hygiene into the long afternoon, another victim of the castle's unforgettable stench. By the time you've endured fleas, filth, and the endless grind of chores, your body already feels battered. Your wrist burns from bites, your shoulders ache from hauling water, and your lungs still taste of smoke. But castles had one more cruelty waiting for anyone foolish enough to fall ill: medicine. It starts with a cough, dry at first, then harsher, rattling your chest. You double over, clutching your ribs, and a servant notices. His eyes widen, not with sympathy but with alarm. Illness in a castle isn't a private matter, it's a contagion, a potential threat to the fragile ecosystem. Within minutes, you're dragged toward a chamber reserved for healing. The room smells worse than the guardrobe, an overpowering mix of herbs, mouldy cloth, and something metallic. At its center, a man in dark robes waits, his expression equal parts serious and suspicious. The castle's physician. You almost laugh. He looks more like a priest than a doctor, and in some ways he is. Medicine here is as much prayer as practice. He presses a hand to your forehead, frowns, and declares you imbalanced, not sick, not infected. Imbalanced. According to the theory of humours, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, every ailment was caused by one fluid overpowering the others. Too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry. Historians still argue whether anyone truly believed this or whether it was simply the best guess available. Either way, your cough has been classified as an elemental rebellion. The cure? Bloodletting. You gape as he sharpens a small knife, humming under his breath. He ties a rag around your arm and pricks the skin, letting crimson drip into a bowl. Excess heat, he mutters. You watch, horrified, as your lifeblood collects like spilled wine. Your knees wobble, your vision swims. You want to scream, "This makes me weaker," but the physician smiles proudly, convinced he's resto. Ring balance. When the bowl is half full, he bandages the cut with linen that looks far from sterile. You swallow hard, praying you won't add infection to your growing list of problems. Next comes the poultice. A servant grinds herbs, mixes them with animal fat, and slaps the paste onto your chest. It's cold, slimy, and smells like rotting garlic. You wrinkle your nose, muttering, "I asked for healing, not seasoning." No one laughs. The physician nods approvingly, as if garlic sludge is a miracle. Then he offers a potion. You peer into the cup and nearly gag. The liquid is brown, thick, with flecks floating like debris in a swamp. Honey tries to mask the taste, but bitterness dominates. You sip reluctantly, wincing as the flavor clings to your tongue. Was that wormwood? Pigeon droppings? Both have been recorded in medieval remedies. You pray it was just wormwood. Your stomach growls, then flips. The potion works, though not as intended. You lurch toward a bucket, retching violently. The physician pats your back, nodding with satisfaction. The sickness is leaving you, he says. You wipe your mouth, glaring, more like your lunch is leaving you. The chamber around you testifies to centuries of such cures. Shelves lined with jars hold powders, bones, dried plants. Some contain recognizable herbs, sage, rosemary, mint. Others look suspiciously like beetles, snakeskins, or worse. One jar rattles with small skulls. Another holds a dark sludge labeled only with a cross. You step back, certain you don't want to know. Leeches slither in a bowl nearby, their slick bodies writhing. The physician gestures proudly, explaining their skill at drawing out bad humors. You shake your head violently. Bloodletting once was enough. But he insists, plucking one up and pressing it to your arm. The creature latches on instantly, sucking with revolting eagerness. You shudder, muttering, 5-star dining for him, nightmare for me. The physician's apprentice scribbles notes on parchment, recording your symptoms. His quill scratches noisily, his eyes wide with curiosity. You wonder if you're a patient or a specimen. Historians still argue whether physicians helped more than they harmed. Judging by your dizziness, you're leaning heavily toward harmed. When the treatment ends, you're told to rest. Rest? In a castle that reeks, crawls, and never sleeps. You laugh weakly, coughing again. The physician frowns, clearly insulted by your lack of faith. He mutters a prayer, sprinkles holy water, and ushers you out. You stumble into the hallway, pale, exhausted, and somehow worse than before. Back in the courtyard, the world seems brighter, harsher. The bell tolls again, echoing against your skull. You clutch your bandaged arm, stomach queasy, skin crawling where the leech fed. Around you, life continues. Workers haul buckets. Guards sharpen swords. No one notices your struggle. Illness is private here unless it becomes deadly. And that's the unspoken truth. Castles feared disease more than invaders. Plague, pox, fever. These could gut a stronghold faster than any siege. Remedies ranged from bizarre to brutal. Crushed emeralds for poison, roasted hedgehogs for urinary problems, live spiders swallowed whole for fever. Each one stranger than the last, each more likely to kill you than cure you. You shiver, half from the draft, half from dread. If this cough grows worse, you'll be dragged back into that chamber, bled and leeched until nothing remains. Survival here doesn't mean avoiding sickness, it means avoiding medicine. And so, with bandaged arm, garlic-stained chest, and a stomach still twisting from swamp potion, you limp back into the castle's grind, haunted by remedies far stranger than the sickness itself. You think chopping wood and scrubbing cauldrons was exhausting. Wait until you stumble into the invisible minefield of castle politics. After all, survival here isn't just about fleas, food, or medicine. It's about words, careless words that can stick to you like leeches. The great hall looks calmer in daylight. Banners droop softly from the rafters, dust drifting through narrow shafts of sunlight. Servants scurry with trays, knights lounge at benches, nobles murmur in clusters. It seems peaceful, almost civilized, until you notice how carefully everyone watches one another. Conversations tilt with sideways glances. Laughter cuts short when a stranger approaches. You realize instantly, the castle doesn't just smell foul, it brims with secrets. You hover near the edges, trying to look invisible. Unfortunately, ears here are sharper than blades. A servant leans in, whispering about the steward's latest misstep. He misplaced a shipment of grain. Before the words fade, another servant hisses, "Shut your mouth, walls have ears." You freeze, glancing around, suddenly paranoid that the stones themselves are listening. It isn't paranoia, though. It's reality. Nobles rise and fall not on swords but on whispers. Rumors travel faster than rats. One moment, you're in favor. The next, you're banished, imprisoned, or worse. Historians still argue how much gossip truly swayed royal courts, but judging by the nervous shuffling here, the answer seems obvious, entirely too much. A knight claps another on the back, smiling broadly, yet the smile doesn't reach his eyes. Moments later, he's whispering with a different ally, his hand cupped to shield the words. You strain to hear, catching fragments. Inheritance, favor, accident. The hairs on your neck rise. Were you just a witness to a murder plot disguised as casual talk? You retreat, deciding silence is safer. But silence here has weight too. Say nothing and you appear suspicious. Say too much and you invite ruin. You mutter under your breath, no winning this game, earning only a glare from a servant who clearly thinks you've said too much already. A noblewoman sweeps past, perfume cloying enough to mask the stench of the hall. She speaks softly to her companion, and though you can't hear the words, the tilt of her eyebrow suggests scandal. Later, you overhear a servant whispering she's meeting the bishop at night. Whether true or not, the rumour grows legs before your very eyes, darting from mouth to mouth. You realise gossip here is like wildfire once sparked, impossible to contain. You recall the fleas in your straw mattress, how they multiplied unseen until they ruled the night. Court whispers feel the same, tiny biting things that spread until no one sleeps soundly. And the dangers? Oh, they're real. One servant tells you eyes darting, voice low of a cook who joked about the Lord's drinking habits. The next morning his knife slipped while carving meat. Accident, they called it. No one believed it. You swallow hard, suddenly hyper-aware of every word tumbling from your lips. Historians debate whether medieval courts were truly this cutthroat or whether chroniclers exaggerated for drama. Standing here, watching every smile bend with hidden meaning, you're convinced exaggeration wasn't necessary. Humans don't need help to be dangerous. Your stomach growls, pulling you toward a tray of cheese and bread. But before you reach, a servant blocks your path. Not yours, he whispers sharply. You step back, muttering an apology. The servant smirks, clearly savouring his small moment of power. Even crumbs here are politics. Later, you find yourself near a group of knights bragging about their exploits. Their voices boom, laughter shaking the rafters. You smile weakly, trying to blend in. One suddenly turns, eyes narrowing. "And what tales do you bring?" he demands. Heat floods your face. Tales? If you speak the wrong words, they could twist them into treason. You stammer something about firewood. The table erupts with laughter, but the knight's gaze lingers, suspicious. The hall grows louder, chatter building, but beneath it all is tension, an undercurrent of danger humming like the bowstring of a crossbow. You realize why nobles guarded their words like treasure. Here, one wrong sentence could end more brutally than battle. A servant tugs your sleeve, hissing that you must move. "Why?" you whisper. He only tilts his head toward the dais. The Lord himself has entered, flanked by guards, expression unreadable. Everyone bows, heads lowered, mouths sealed. Silence sweeps across the hall, heavy and absolute. The Lord speaks briefly: grain shortages, new levies, an upcoming hunt. His words sound mundane, but the reactions around you aren't. Nobles nod furiously, desperate to appear loyal. Servants glance sideways, calculating which alliances to shift. The air feels thick enough to choke on. You bow, wishing you could vanish into the straw like a flea. When the Lord departs, chatter resumes instantly, louder, sharper, fueled by nervous energy. Half the hall whispers about the hunt. The other half whispers about who looked too pleased, who frowned too deeply. You realize truth doesn't matter here. Perception does. Your chest tightens. The physician's remedies may have weakened your body, but court intrigue threatens your sanity. You long for honest labor, even mucking stables. At least manure doesn't stab you in the back. As the day winds down, you retreat to a corner, eyes scanning the shifting alliances, ears ringing with murmurs. You think of last night's fleas and laugh bitterly. At least their bites were honest. Here, whispers of fangs hidden behind smiles. And so, caught in the net of court intrigue, you learn the castle's most dangerous truth, that survival isn't about strength or even health. It's about silence, timing, and luck, because whispers could cost your life faster than any sword. The day has been long, and hunger gnaws at you again. Not the casual hunger of skipping lunch, but the deep, twisting ache that makes your ribs feel hollow. Evening arrives, and with it, the promise, or threat, of supper. Tonight, the great hall fills once more, torches flickering against stone, shadows dancing over long wooden tables. The air hums with chatter, laughter, and the clatter of cups. At first glance, it looks like abundance. Platters arrive, carried by servants straining under the weight. Roasted fowl gleams golden, fat dripping onto trenchers of bread. Bowls of pottage steam, thick with vegetables and the occasional chunk of meat. Wheels of cheese sit beside baskets of fruit, apples and pears shining in the firelight. For a fleeting moment, your heart lifts. This is what feasting means: plenty, warmth, a brief escape from toil. But then reality reveals itself. The best seats, closest to the Lord's dais, claim the richest dishes. Nobles spear meat with jeweled knives, filling their plates with roasted boar and sugared almonds. Their goblets overflow with spiced wine, the aroma sweet and intoxicating. You, meanwhile, are shoved toward the far end of the hall, where scraps find their way down the table like water trickling through cracks. By the time a platter reaches you, only bones and grease remain. You tear into what bread is left, stale and dry, soaking it in thin broth. It fills your stomach, but not your spirit. You mutter, "Guess I'm dining on medieval leftovers," and nearly laugh at your own misery. Nearly. The imbalance is striking. Historians still argue whether lords feasted this extravagantly every night or only on special occasions. Judging by the nobles' smug satisfaction, you suspect it's frequent enough, yet for servants like you, famine lurks just around the corner. Tonight may be plenty, but next week the granary could stand empty. Rats for tea. Ning on the last kernels of grain. And that's the truth of castle dining. Feasts and famine danced hand in hand. 1 week, tables groaned under roasted swan and honey cakes. The next, villagers starved, bellies hollow, forced to chew bark or boil weeds. You shiver at the thought. Hunger isn't a guest here, it's a predator, circling always, waiting for a chance to strike. A servant beside you gnaws on a bone, eyes darting toward the nobles. Don't stare, he hisses when you glance. They'll notice. You lower your gaze, ashamed, but you can't help noticing. The jeweled goblets, the laughter echoing against high rafters, the way servants pour wine until their wrists ache. It feels like two worlds trapped in one hall, yours shrinking, theirs swelling. A platter of fish passes, its smell sharp, almost rancid. You hesitate, but hunger pushes you forward. The flesh is soft, too soft, and you gag slightly at the taste. Freshness isn't guaranteed here. Food storage was primitive, salted barrels and smoky cellars doing their best. Sometimes dinner meant swallowing spoilage with a prayer. You take another bite, grimacing, muttering, "Protein's protein," though your stomach disagrees. At the high table, a minstrel strums a lute, singing of heroic deeds. Nobles clap in rhythm, drunk on both music and mead. You roll your eyes, whispering, "Try a song about splitting firewood." The servant beside you smirks but quickly hides it, aware laughter itself could be dangerous. Then the ale arrives. Wooden mugs slosh with frothy liquid, pass down the line. You gulp eagerly, grateful for anything to wash away the taste of fish. The ale is weak, sour, but safer than water. You drink deep, letting the buzz soften the edges of hunger. Still, famine's shadow lingers. You overhear two stewards whispering about dwindling stores. If winter's harsh, one mutters, "We'll ration by month's end." The other nods grimly. You freeze ale halfway to your lips. Ration, the word alone chills your spine. And here lies the paradox. Castles could flaunt luxury while hiding scarcity. The feast tonight masks the gnawing fear of tomorrow's famine. You chew your bread slowly, wondering if this crumb will be the last easy bite for weeks. Historians debate whether such banquets were meant to reassure or deceive. Perhaps both. For nobles, the spectacle reinforced power. For servants, it dangled false security. For you, it's a cruel joke. You've eaten less than a pigeon, yet the hall brims with food you cannot touch. The music swells. Torches burn low. Laughter grows louder. At the far end, servants slump, bellies barely filled. One coughs, another scratches at bites. Hunger doesn't end with supper. It lingers into dreams. You sigh, leaning back, staring at rafters blackened with smoke. Your stomach twists again. Was it the fish, or simply the knowledge that plenty tonight doesn't erase famine tomorrow? Either way, the ache set, les deeper, a reminder of the castle's cruel rhythm. When the lord finally rises, silence falls. He raises his cup, voice booming, thanks to God for abundance. Around him, nobles cheer, servants echo half-heartedly. You murmur the words, wondering if God notices who truly feasts and who only watches. The hall empties slowly, scraps swept into baskets, bones tossed to dogs. You grab one last crust, chewing as you shuffle toward the dormitory. Tomorrow will bring chores, fleas, smoke. Tonight brings only the memory of a table groaning with food you couldn't touch. And so, with hunger gnawing deeper than any leech or rumour, you learn the cruelest truth of all. In castles, feasts and famine are two sides of the same stale loaf. Night falls again, and the castle groans into uneasy quiet. Torches gutter in their sconces, shadows stretch long, and the chill sharpens as stone walls bleed out the day's meagre warmth. You drag your aching body toward the dormitory, every step echoing in rhythm with your exhaustion. But if you thought rest would finally offer peace, you were wrong. Sleep here is a battlefield of its own. The dormitory is nothing more than a long, drafty chamber crammed with straw pallets. You pick your way through the maze of bodies already sprawled across the floor. Snores clash like competing saws. Muffled coughs punctuate the dark, and someone mutters in their dreams. The smell assaults you before you've even chosen a corner. Sweat, damp straw, smoke clinging to hair and skin, a hint of chamber pot. You wrinkle your nose, muttering, "Medieval aromatherapy, now in nightmare scent." You collapse onto a pallet that feels more like a sack stuffed with sticks than bedding. Straw pokes through the fabric, scratching at your legs. You shift, sigh, and shift again, but comfort remains a stranger. A flea skitters across your wrist almost instantly, eager for its nightly feast. You slap at it, only to feel two more bites along your ankle. Great. The fleas survived dinner better than you did. You close your eyes, hoping exhaustion will drown discomfort, but the dormitory conspires against you. The man beside you snores so loudly the rafters vibrate. Another coughs a wet, ragged hack that makes you wonder if you've traded fleas for plague. Somewhere down the row, two servants whisper, their voices sharp with argument. Privacy is non-existent. Sleep a privilege. Historians still argue how often medieval folk truly rested, whether they embraced segmented sleep, 2 shifts broken by midnight chores, or simply endured exhaustion until collapse. Lying here, sleepless and itchy, you suspect collapse was the only method. You pull your tunic tighter, trying to shield against the draft that seeps through cracks in the stone. The air grows colder, your breath puffing white. You curl into yourself, muttering, "Who needs a blanket when you've got hypothermia?" A rat scurries across the floor nearby, claws scratching wood. You jolt, heart racing. The others don't even stir. Clearly this is normal. You wish it wasn't. Minutes stretch into hours. Just as you begin to drift, a bell tolls in the courtyard. Not the alarm of siege, just the rhythm of the night watch. Still, the sound jars you awake, heartbeat quickening. You sigh, realizing sleep will be a series of stolen fragments at best. Then comes the straw dust. You sneeze once, twice, throat itching, lungs tight. The smoke from the hall earlier lingers in your chest, mixing with this haze. You cough quietly, praying you won't wake the knight snoring like thunder 2 pallets down. He shifts anyway, grumbles, then settles. You exhale relief, but your body rebels again. The flea bites burn, welts rising across your skin. You scratch furiously, unable to resist. The more you scratch, the more they bite. It feels like a war waged under your skin. You whisper, "At this rate, I'll be their midnight banquet." Sleep impossible. Still, moments come when exhaustion drags you under. Dreams blur, fields of grain, a river's cool water, a soft bed that doesn't scratch or bite. But then you wake again, jolted by a cough, a snore, or the sharp sting of another flea. Rest here isn't peace, it's survival in miniature, a constant tug between fatigue and discomfort. You glance around the dormitory, faces are shadowed, eyes closed, but not all sleep deeply. One servant's eyes glint in the dark, wide open, staring at nothing. Another mutters prayers, beads clutched tight. Even in slumber, no one looks at ease. The castle robs peace as ruthlessly as it robs warmth. Historians debate whether medieval people accepted this misery as normal or simply endured because they had no choice. Judging by the resigned expressions, you suspect endurance was the only option. After all, who complains when there's no alternative? You scratch again, sigh, and close your eyes, trying to fake rest even if you can't achieve it. Outside, the wind moans through arrow slits, a low, mournful song. You pull the thin blanket higher, but it does little. You think of the noble's feather mattress above, stuffed with down, layered in furs. You mutter bitterly, all this luxury, and they couldn't spare a pillow? Your neck protests with every shift. At last, the faintest hint of dawn seeps through cracks, grey light bleeding into the chamber. You realize you've snatched only scraps of sleep, your body sore, your skin aflame with bites, your head heavy with exhaustion. And yet, the castle bell tolls again, calling for labor. You groan, dragging yourself upright, straw clinging to your clothes. Around you, others rise too, scratching, coughing, yawning. No one complains aloud. Complaints don't split wood or scrub pots. You force yourself up, every bone aching, eyes gritty. And so, with your strength diminished by a night of restless torment, you stumble once more into the grinding rhythm of the castle, learning that even sleep here is just another form of suffering. The castle wakes with you, though you feel as if you never truly slept. Your eyes sting, your body aches, and yet the clang of the morning bell demands movement. Today you're sent to the courtyard, where clashing steel and shouted orders shake the stones. At last you witness the heartbeat of the fortress, training for war. The yard is alive with motion. Knights in chainmail stomp across the ground, armor rattling with every step. Their squires scramble after them, lugging shields nearly as tall as themselves. Wooden swords crack against one another in practice duels, the sound sharp, relentless. The air smells of sweat, iron and churned mud. You pause at the edge, trying not to look out of place, though you're certain you do. A knight roars a command and the men-at-arms slam their shields together in unison. The noise reverberates through your chest like thunder. You flinch, muttering, better than coffee for a wake-up call. None of them laugh. Their faces are grim, focused, eyes darting as if enemies might leap from the walls at any moment. You watch as squires drag heavy targets into place, wooden dummies shaped like men. Knights charge with spears, thrusting again and again until splinters explode into the air. One misses, stumbling slightly, and the master-at-arms barks an insult so cutting you wince. Training isn't encouragement here, it's survival drilled into the bones. The clash of real steel soon follows. Two knights circle each other, blades flashing, shields raised. Their swords collide with a ringing crack that makes you cringe. Sparks leap from steel, sweat drips into their eyes, and still they fight, relentless. One slams the other back with a shield bash so hard you swear you felt it from the sidelines. Historians still argue how often medieval castles prepared for battle, whether drills were daily or only when threats loomed. Standing here you be. Leave the former. This isn't pageantry, it's obsession. These men know one slip could mean death in war, and it's not only knights. Archers line the far wall, bows creaking as they notch arrows. The twang of strings fills the air as shafts fly, thudding into straw butts with deadly rhythm. You shiver, imagining being on the wrong end of that storm. Even at rest, the archer's fingers twitch, eager for another pull. Nearby, boys too young for war, yet old enough to serve chase each other with sticks, mimicking their heroes. Their laughter cuts through the grim drills for a moment, but it's sobering. These children are training too groomed for a lifetime of labor or battle, perhaps both. You wonder if they know play will end soon enough. Your task is menial but dangerous, hauling buckets of water to cool the smith's forge. Inside the smithy, the air is an inferno. The blacksmith pounds glowing iron, sparks spraying like fireflies. Each strike rings through your ears until your skull vibrates. Sweat soaks your tunic instantly. The blacksmith doesn't glance at you, just gestures sharply for another bucket, his eyes fixed on the red-hot blade forming under his hammer. You glimpse half-finished weapons stacked against the wall swords, axes, spearheads. Each one gleams with promise, each one destined to spill blood. You swallow, realizing these aren't props for training. They're tools of survival, or slaughter, depending on perspective. When you return to the yard, a knight collapses onto a bench, pulling off his helmet. His face shines with sweat, his hair plastered, his hands raw from gripping steel. He gulps ale from a jug, water being deemed too risky. His squire kneels to unlace armor, fingers trembling from fatigue. You sigh, watching, wondering who truly works harder, the knight or the boy. Suddenly, a horn blares. For one panicked moment, you think it's an alarm that enemies are at the gates. Your stomach drops, heart racing, but no, the horn only signals a mock drill. Guards scramble to stations, archers race to the walls, gates creak as chains pull tight. The castle transforms before your eyes, peaceful courtyard now a war machine. You realize then the terrifying efficiency. Even without real enemies, the castle rehearses death. Every movement is calculated, every order obeyed instantly. It dawns on you, these walls may be cold and cruel, but they are alive, always braced for battle. Historians debate whether these drills were theatre for nobles or genuine preparation. Watching the sweat, the bruises, the urgency, you know the answer. These men XP. Eked war, maybe tomorrow, maybe never. But they live as if the siege bell will toll any moment. The horn fades, soldiers relax, laughter cracks the tension. A knight claps his comrade on the back, boasting of his strike. The master-at-arms growls that they'd all be dead if this were real. The mood lifts, then sours again, an endless pendulum. You back away, shaken. Splitting firewood seems almost merciful compared to this endless rehearsal of violence. Yet the truth presses on you. In a medieval castle, even peace feels like war. And so, with ears ringing from clashing steel and lungs filled with smoke and sweat, you learn another cruel lesson. Here, every day is training for a battle that might never come, yet one that everyone knows could arrive at dawn. The clang of swords fades behind you, but the castle never truly quiets. Its heartbeat simply shifts, pulsing through stone corridors and whispered prayers. Tonight you discover the place where faith tries, often fails to soothe the raw edges of life here, the chapel. The chapel is tucked into a corner of the fortress, smaller than the Great Hall but far grander than the dormitory. Arched windows filter moonlight through coloured glass, painting the cold flagstones with patches of red and blue. The air smells faintly of beeswax from melted candles, mingled with incense that lingers like smoke after a battle. You step inside, shoulders loosening for the first time all day. Compared to fleas, chores and gossip, silence feels like a blessing. Servants shuffle in, heads bowed, lips moving silently. Knights kneel at wooden benches, armor creaking as they cross themselves. Even the Lord appears briefly, robes heavy with embroidery, his expression solemn. You notice how every eye watches him even here. Piety doubles as politics. Pray too long and you appear holy, too short and you appear corrupt. The castle's games never sleep, even in God's house. You kneel awkwardly on the cold stone, straw-stuffed tunic doing little to cushion your knees. Your joints protest almost immediately. You mutter under your breath, so faith hurts physically too, earning only a stern glance from the priest. His voice rises, chanting in Latin, words flowing like a river you can't quite follow. You bow your head, pretending to understand. Historians still argue how deeply common folk grasped the rituals, whether Latin was comfort or mystery. For you, it's a mystery, alien syllables washing over like rain. But the rhythm is hypnotic. Candlelight flickers, shadows sway, and for a moment you almost forget your hunger, your exhaustion, your flea-bitten skin. A bell chimes softly, and bread is lifted hot. Eye gleaming in the candlelight. The priest declares it holy, a miracle on the tongue. You think of your stale crust from last night and almost laugh. Miraculous indeed, to eat without chewing gravel. Yet here, the ritual matters more than the taste. Belief becomes a shield, however thin, against the miseries of the castle. You glance around. One servant clutches a rosary, knuckles white, whispering fiercely as if bargaining with heaven. Another knight kneels so stiffly you wonder if he's more concerned with appearance than prayer. Even the Lord sneaks a glance at his steward, measuring loyalty in the length of his bow. Faith, you realize, is another currency here, spiritual and political intertwined. The sermon turns towards sin, the priest's voice booming, echoing off stone. He warns of temptation, of the devil lurking, of judgment waiting. You squirm, half from the hardness of the floor, half from guilt. Not that you've sinned much today unless scratching flea bites counts. Still, his tone makes you certain you've failed in some unseen way. That was the genius of medieval sermons. They convinced everyone they needed forgiveness constantly, which kept the chapel full and the priest's authority firm. Historians debate whether fear or comfort defined medieval religion. Sitting here, you feel both: fear of hellfire, comfort in shared misery. You wonder which truly ruled hearts in this dimly lit room. The priest sprinkles holy water, droplets landing cold on your skin. You shiver, muttering, "As if I wasn't damp enough already." No one smiles. Humor doesn't belong here. Faith is too serious to laugh at. When the service ends, candles gutter low, and worshippers shuffle out. You linger a moment, staring at the carved crucifix looming over the altar. The figure's wooden eyes seem to follow, heavy with suffering. You whisper, "At least you understand what it's like here." Then rise slowly, knees stiff, body weary. Outside, the night air feels sharper, cleaner. The chapel's incense clings to your tunic, mixing with sweat and smoke, a strange perfume of salvation and suffering. Around you, whispers resume instantly: who prayed longest, who seemed distracted, who failed to attend. Even faith is weaponized into gossip. You sigh, realizing there is no escape from politics, not even in God's house. Yet something lingers, a sliver of calm, a flicker of light in the gloom. Maybe faith truly was the only balm in a place where fleas feasted, chores crushed, and whispers killed. Maybe not enough to say VU, but enough to help you stagger through another day. And so, as the chapel doors close behind you and the castle folds again into shadow, you carry with you the uneasy truth. In this fortress, faith offers no peace, only a fragile pause between sufferings. Dawn breaks once more, but the castle feels heavier than ever. Your bones ache from labor, your stomach groans from hunger, and your skin still smarts from flea bites. The clang of weapons, the stench of smoke, the endless whispers, all have drained you. Yet survival here doesn't end with walls and routines. Tonight, you'll learn that the castle itself is only half the struggle. The world beyond its gates brings fears of its own. The drawbridge creaks as it lowers, chains rattling like iron serpents. Beyond, the countryside stretches rolling fields, dark forests, and the faint outline of villages clinging to life under the castle's shadow. You join a small party sent out to gather wood and herd straying animals. Fresh air strikes your lungs, a relief after days of smoke and sweat. But relief is fleeting. The silence beyond the walls is deceptive, for danger lurks in every shadow. Bandits haunt the roads, desperate men driven by hunger or war. You glance nervously at the tree line, half expecting arrows to streak out at any moment. Stories of ambushes circulate constantly in the dormitory. Travellers vanishing, wagons stripped bare, corpses left in ditches. Historians still argue whether banditry was as rampant as chroniclers claimed or exaggerated to justify stricter rule. Walking here, heart-thumping, you're convinced it was real enough. And then there's the forest itself. Dense, dark, alive with noises you can't place. A snap of twigs, a low rustle in the undergrowth. You freeze, clutching your bundle of sticks like a weapon. A servant whispers it's only deer. You nod, though your imagination paints wolves with glowing eyes, hungry after a lean winter. Medieval forests weren't peaceful retreats. They were survival zones filled with predators and curses whispered by frightened villagers. You trudge on, mud sucking at your boots. The sky darkens with clouds, threatenings. G-rain. A sudden chill prickles your skin. Weather here can shift swiftly, turning a routine chore into disaster. A servant beside you mutters about omens, glancing skyward with suspicion. You chuckle weakly. It's just rain. But you're not so sure. The world beyond these walls thrives on superstition. Soon you reach a village, its huts huddled like beggars against the earth. Smoke curls from a few chimneys, thin and uncertain. The people here glance up as you pass, their faces hollow, eyes wary. Children cling to mothers, staring at your party as if you bring both hope and threat. You realize the castle looms in their lives not as protection but as burden. Taxes, tithes, levies, words that drain their meager existence. You overhear a villager muttering about famine, about sons pressed into service, about daughters married off to secure debts. Their bitterness clings heavier than the smoke. You shift uncomfortably, understanding for the first time that the castle's wealth is carved from these people's bones. Protection comes at a cost and they pay it daily. As you head back, dusk creeps in, shadows lengthening, the forest darker than ever. Every noise feels sharper, the caw of a crow, the snap of a branch, the howl of distant wolves. You quicken your pace, every instinct screaming to return to stone walls, no matter how suffocating they are. Safety, you realize, is relative. The castle might reek, bite and whisper, but outside, the world simply devours. By the time the drawbridge rises behind you, your legs tremble with relief. You slump against the wall, grateful for stone's embrace despite everything. Its bitter irony, the place that torments you also shields you. The castle is both prison and sanctuary, misery and salvation. Historians still argue whether medieval castles offered real safety or only the illusion of it. Standing here, you know the truth is both. Within the walls, you endure fleas, filth, politics, and hunger. Beyond them, you face wolves, bandits, famine, and fear. Either way, survival feels like a gamble, one you never asked to play. And so, as night falls again, you curl onto your straw pallet, every bite, bruise, and whisper etched into your bones. You understand at last the cruel paradox. Castles may stand strong against siege, but life within them gnaws at the soul until nothing is left. The torches fade, the noise quiets, and the castle finally exhales. You close your eyes, letting the darkness settle gently instead of harshly. The draught cools your skin, no longer biting but soft, like a passing hand smoothing the day's edges. Your breathing slows, each increase longer, each exhale softer. You picture the castle from above, its towers silvered by moonlight, its walls no longer menacing but steady, ancient, patient. The fleas, the whispers, the clang of swords all blur into distant echoes. What remains is stone, earth, and sky. Your body feels heavier now, the mattress less cruel, the bites less sharp. The rhythm of your breath blends with the quiet hum of the night. The worries, bandits, hunger, sickness fade into shadows that no longer reach you. You let the silence wrap you, let the weight of the day dissolve. For once, survival doesn't matter. Only stillness does, only rest. And as you sink into that rest, the castle itself seems to whisper not with gossip or menace, but with a lullaby carried on stone and air. You have endured. You are safe for now. Sleep.